For many years, the River Tyne's been associated with heavy industry, yet increasingly now it's a place for leisure. We have a 350 berth marina, and the focus for most people is a place to enjoy boating and to enjoy the River Tyne. We've got 18 acres of water in our marina, and we've got very hard granite dock walls. Like much of the rest of the River Tyne, nature's been squeezed out. The river's been made into a hard-sided channel, and as such, the landscapes and ecosystems which would have been associated with estuaries such as the Tyne have been pushed out.
It's nice. I mean, the marina is a beautiful place. The ship that was here before was getting a bit dilapidated, a bit rusty, so it's nice to see that disappear and do something to help encourage the wildlife. You know, there were a couple of swans in there that were, I think, nesting recently, and a lot of people took a lot of interest. So it'd be great to see that pushed forward and do more with the wildlife.
Over the water at Hebburn, the Bushwood Fascines will collect the mud and the silt from the estuary when the tide covers that area of the riverbank. When the tide goes out, the Bushwood Fascine will hold that sediment back and will cause it to build up on the rubble that is on the ground there. Once that mud has covered the rubble, we're hoping that salt marsh species will start to grow there, thus extending the salt marsh from its little estuary edge right down to the water's edge, to the line where the seaweeds are.
This estuary was absolutely pivotal in the Industrial Revolution. It was a major coal exporter and had a thriving shipbuilding industry. Now, due to these human interactions, along with flood and coastal protection, most of the valuable intertidal habitat that would have lined this estuary is missing. This habitat, such as salt marsh and mudflat, has so many environmental and social benefits to us, such as providing habitat for juvenile fish, biodiversity, providing clean water, flood protection and storage, and also, most importantly, storing and sequestering carbon, so helping us tackle the climate emergency.
The Tyne Estuary Partnership is a strong strategic partnership aimed at improving the River Tyne from an environmental, ecological, economical and a social point of view. We work with a wide range of organisations along the tidal stretch of the river from Wylam down to its mouth. These bodies include private landowners such as Boatfolk, local authorities, strategic organisations such as the Marine Management Organisation, Port of Tyne authorities and the Environment Agency in order to deliver these improvements to the Tyne estuary.
Boatfolk, we were delighted when Tyne Estuary Partnership asked us to get involved with the project on the River Tyne. As a marina, we've always tried to do what we can to create a home for wildlife. We just hope that the introduction of this will create more opportunities for nature within the marina and help soften the hard urban environment which we find ourselves in.
I'm Nick Schreiner, and I'm the International Technical Manager with Biomatrix Water. We're based in Forres in the Highlands, and we manufacture modular floating ecosystems. It allows the creation of both surface and subsurface ecosystems. The modular ecosystems themselves are fabricated from high-density polyethylene, so it's a type of plastic that's both made from recycled material and is completely recyclable. And then all the various modules are connected together using stainless steel, which means that it's a very robust design that is well suited for brackish and saltwater installations. It won't rust, it won't break apart, and we could expect something like this to last for 15, 20 years or longer. The plants we'll use here at the Royal Keys Marina are primarily halophyte species, which means that they're plants that are well adapted to saltwater and can survive in the harsh conditions here along the northeast coast of England.
Things like club rush, marram grass, sea holly, sea plantain, and yet beneath the floating pontoon there's going to be cages which will offer a home for fish to lay their eggs, to find a nook or a cranny to hide.
Our primary objective is to create a foothold for nature really to do its own work. So the floating ecosystem, or the floating ecosystem modules, are really just the backbone, and it's the plants and the subsurface and subsurface microbiological life that will really establish themselves and create the really abundant biosphere to help transform the waters here.
Both the Hebburn site and here at Royal Quays Marina will be monitored using our partnership with the University of Newcastle. Their Marine Sciences Department are heavily involved in our work and are encouraging their students to take part in monitoring activities so that we can demonstrate the success of these projects in the long term.
It's absolutely fantastic because it falls in the South Tyneside initiative to reduce carbon emissions by 2030 and fall in with our decarbonisation agenda.
Evaluating historic OS maps, we can tell that 100% of the salt marsh within these maps is missing from this estuary. Across England, 85% of salt marsh is missing.
It's just nice having something visual. The whole area has been revitalised quite a lot recently. It's drawn a lot of attention, especially with the new housing, with the restaurant in place. It's a nice place to be. It's a nice place to live. We really enjoy living in the area, so anything that helps it flourish is fantastic.
It's an ecosystem and it's going to be placed on the marina for all of the wildlife, especially Romeo. No, I'm joking, it's for all of the wildlife, but I think what I can gather that they can nest on there. It's like somewhere on there. Romeo is, well, I call him my swan, but he's not. I've known him for about 5 years and he's the king of the castle down here. So I think when we get this on, he might take over. I think it is all for him. But yeah, that's who Romeo is. Also, you've got all the ducks, the terns. It's just a little safe haven for them.
So, all in all, I think it's a win for everyone. I think it'll add to the marina. Hopefully we can do our bit for the River Tyne as well.
Delivering nature-based solutions, such as floating ecosystems, green roofs or urban trees, will help connect nature, clean our air and our water, and hold back storm waters. Greening our cities and towns brings nature back, but is also vital for our health and well-being. Evidence shows a greener environment where we live makes us healthier and happier. Moving forward, the Tyne Estuary Partnership have several projects that it would like to deliver, including more floating ecosystem islands at Dunstan Staithes and Newcastle Quayside, more salt marsh creation at Hebburn, and plans to help green abandoned wet docks, a legacy of our past shipbuilding industry. To fund these, we are applying for grants, but we are keen to talk to private businesses and industry who would like to invest in nature for the future, through sponsorship, social corporate responsibility, or carbon offsetting, and the upcoming biodiversity net gain options.
The world is changing. So must we. Billions more want cheap commodities made from dwindling resources and harmful materials. Extreme weather events can disrupt supply chains. And new legislation means we must continually adapt. Climate change affects us all at some level. But to transform the world to sustainability, we need the right skills and knowledge in place. At IEMA, we bring people together, creating opportunities for innovation and growth. On the front line, we help people translate compliance with resources and toolboxes. We support people with skills gaps so they feel reassured everyone in the supply chain is aligned. We help plot career paths for people looking to gain experience and accreditations, and open up people to new ways of thinking, transforming productivity and competitiveness, cultivating connections around the world, and helping people get recognition for cutting-edge projects. With the urgent need to move towards a sustainable future, we need to stand together to mobilize and drive change, an alliance that can challenge norms, influence governments, drive innovation, and demonstrate that people can achieve measurable change on a global scale. IEMA, together transforming the world to sustainability.
Climate change affects everyone. Global temperatures are already 1.2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. This is why COP26 in Glasgow represents a crucial opportunity for world leaders to ensure any further rises do not significantly exceed 1.5 degrees Celsius. At IEMA, the Institute of Environmental Management and Assessment, we are working to address critical sustainability challenges. With more than 17,000 members working within key areas of the sustainability profession and wider environment sector, we are well placed to understand the outcomes required to tackle the climate change emergency and drive real and lasting change from within. However, we need climate leadership at all levels. We need to establish policy frameworks and strategic approaches that build certainty to ensure organisations can be confident in investing in a green transition. We need to embed climate change as a mainstream business issue, and we need increased transparency in the reporting and disclosure of climate change performance. The need for change is clear and urgent. By working together, by utilising shared knowledge and best practice, and by setting clear and unambiguous targets, we can secure a greener future. IEMA, together with transforming the world to sustainability.
name's Stephen Lipscomb and I'm the Kildahead Wildwood Project Officer with the Northumberland Wildlife Trust. I've been on the project now for 2.5 years since it began its delivery phase, and in that time I've been responsible for all of the practical delivery of that project. Also heavily involved in the planning, the procurement and also the engagement and outreach with local communities and organisations. I want to tell you a little bit today about how we've managed to achieve what we have done in that 2.5 years. Now, as you can imagine, with a project like Wildwood, the practical delivery of it requires me to spend a lot of time working with trees, stakes and tubes and moving them around site. But there's a lot more to it, a lot more in the background, including a lot of the logistics, so working with delivery drivers and getting trucks in and out of the depot, also working with a quad to get stuff around site, but also a helicopter last year to try and get the stakes to where we need them on the side of an incredibly difficult to get out hill. Alongside that, I also need to work with all the different organisations that make a project like this possible. Forestry England are our partner and incredibly important because they're the landowners on the site that we're working on. Natural England are heavily involved because this is an ecological project and so we need to know what we're working towards, set guidelines that come down from government. But also we need to work with the next generation, so we're spending a lot of time outreaching with students from Northumbria, Newcastle and Cumbria University, but also Kirkley Hall. We've also worked with local groups, local youth groups like Young Ecologists, Duke of Edinburgh groups, and also a group called Children North East. But by far and away the most important group that we work with are our volunteers. Now it's safe to say that without the volunteers there's no way a project like Wildwood could happen the way it does. Over the 2.5 years that I've been working on the project, we've managed to engage with over 80 volunteers. They've come and done 60 days worth of work with us, and that's equated to an incredible 2,630 hours worth of work on the Wildwood site. The scale, variety and intensity of the work our volunteers do as well is incredible. They've planted over 15,000 trees across a 100-hectare site. This is a site that has no tracks and no roads. Everything has to be carried in by hand. They've built a currick out of stone that will be used to house interpretation. They've monitored the vegetation on site. They've looked at reptile numbers and amphibians. They've also done bird monitoring on site. They've been out collecting willow cuttings in the middle of winter that have subsequently been planted out across the entire site. Not only that, they've managed to camp out overnight on site as well in the middle of summer. During this, they did bat walks, they foraged for their own dinner, and we looked at moth traps. Alongside all the amazing work we do with the volunteers, we really are trying within the project to try and give something back as well, to try and think of ways which the volunteers can take something tangible away from their time with us. To that end, we spent some time visiting other projects in the area to get a context of what we're doing and why it's important. Last year we went to Glenlude, a John Muir Trust project up in the borders of Scotland, and the year before that we were at Carafran, a project run by the Borders Forest Trust. Now both these projects are massively important and huge influences on what the Wildwood is trying to do. By showing the volunteers what we're doing, we hope to be able to show them what they are achieving, not now, but in 5, 10, 20 years' time. We're also trying to offer training opportunities within the project. All of the ecological monitoring that we're doing requires skills and methods that most people will not be familiar with, but we're trying to bring in experts to give that training to the volunteers who will do this monitoring. Last year we did bird monitoring training over 2 days. The year before that we did reptile monitoring and vegetation monitoring. And so into the future, how are our volunteers going to be working on the Wildwood for the next 2.5 years? Well, we're going to continue with our training. We've still got many more taxa to be doing on site, to be monitoring. We're looking at mammals, both large and small, including bats. We're going to be looking at invertebrates and focusing on butterflies and moths. We're also going to be looking at some of less known plants, mosses and lichens. Alongside that though, we're moving to a phase where we kind of start looking at some more obscure trees that we might be planting on site. And we may be looking at training up volunteers to help us grow these trees, through seed collecting to looking after the seed over winter and then propagating them into trees that we can plant on site. And as we move towards the end of the project, it's time to start looking at how is this really fitting in with the wider world of conservation. And to that end, we'll be going to look at taking trips to some of the big, really progressive projects that are going on around the UK. In particular, getting up to Scotland to look at Trees for Life and look at Wild Ennerdale over in Cumbria, but also looking at some of the big partnership projects like Cairngorms Connect. And this again is trying to give the volunteers an opportunity to see what they have been contributing to and what their work now may be making happen in 20, 30 and up to 100 years into the future. So it just remains for me to say a massive thank you to all of the volunteers who have engaged with the Wildwood project over the last 2.5 years. And I really sincerely hope that you will continue to engage for the next 2.5 years. And hopefully we'll see many more and get to achieve incredible things together. Thank you.
We're looking at a handful of very old pine trees here, and we have looked at the date of these and they're at least 150 years old.
Looking at studies and from pollen analysis, we think that the Scots pine that are present predate Kielder Forest and therefore have either arrived there on their own accord or have always been present. So that makes these trees very rare.
Until recently it was thought that they'd all been eliminated. But this group are possibly the only survivors. And if so, they are of very considerable historical, ecological interest.
If we can collect the cones from the pine trees here, extract the seed, grow seedlings and plant them out, then that would contribute to this native woodland that we're planning to create.
In this district, no QR codes, cycle lanes, no tax, no porcelain rolling pins, no hashtags, hipsters, Hindus, and no chaos with Ed Miliband. Just waterfalls and curricks, cairns, grouse butts, sniggering springs, sheepfolds, long grown over pits, and fixed on musty price 2 shillings maps the names of Haggy Know, of Weather Lair, of Baiting Hope and Blakeman's Law, Devil's Lapful, Plashet's Moor, of Myrdykes and Brands Walls, of Lamrig, Jedhead, Midfell, Big Flow. A goshawk, or a buzzard by the Sitka shoreline, watches through its citric eye. The Gore-Tex hominids troop down by Long Crag and by Peel Fell, by Monkside and by Ravens Hill, by Wiley's Craigs, by Wiley's Syke, by Dan's Pike and by Scrathy Halls. Straddling the Coomston Burn, putting a foot in the Scottburn, the creeping horror of a filled-up boot, paddling in the Carryburn, praying at the Kielderstone to a big sky at the moment of its bruising. O sky, O ice-cold moss in your halo of water. We come down off the Grum by Farney Slack, chatting. We come down Williams Clough, trailing midges. We use our camera phones. By under stony holes I hoard my pombears. The bizzle and the trouting pass us by. We burst this dry exclosure with goodwill and breaking of Bratton, alarming martins. But air and tiredness begin in this wide, unpeopled theatre to stall our stride, to show how talking starts, to know the ground of green law, but see the sound as silence grows, the forest parts, a doe goes by, the pines ignore the mammals gathered on the forest floor, me with the silent stretch of wild time, the cleft clough, the bird calls, shivering in the birch, the fell, the syke, the moor of sharp grass and heather hiding the patient moment while the humans pass.
At JC Atkinson, we're committed to addressing the concerns families have repeatedly expressed about the impact their choice of coffin has on the environment. It began in 1992 with the Sapling Tree Planting Initiative. We then ensured all mahogany-style wood coffins were from a named, sustainable source. We pioneered chipboard using waste wood in 1998, and in 2002 we secured FSC certification for our coffins. We then harnessed the power of rainwater and biomass heating before being named Sunday Times Best Green Company. In 2007, we launched Greener Goodbyes, making it easier for people to have a greener funeral. The following year, we became a Carbon Trust standard bearer before deciding to generate our own solar electricity in 2010. Tree number 10,000 was planted in 2012, and in 2015, we launched a plastic-free range. In 2021, we added a simple app to Greener Goodbyes that helps people understand, minimise and rebalance the environmental footprint of their funeral by calculating the carbon emissions associated with each choice. Alongside all of this, JC Atkinson has put its name to supporting environmental initiatives on a local and national scale.
Welcome to Northumberland National Park, home to England's darkest skies and most tranquil spaces, steeped in culture and heritage spanning thousands of years. The park is a place for you to escape to, a place to experience and explore, a place where people and nature can thrive together. The National Park is the rolling hills and stories from our past, the hill forts and bastles, the peat bogs and hay meadows, the wildlife and the bird song, the lofts and the waterfalls. It is one of England's finest landscapes, a land of far horizons and unique and special places, conserved and enhanced for all. We weave through the valleys with England's cleanest river. We trawl with the creatures of the land, where nature keeps the air clean and we breathe with the lush landscape. The National Park is our favourite places, our well-being, supported by nature and the memories made with our loved ones, where we keep our minds and bodies active, where we connect with nature and discover what came before us. It's a park for everyone in society because we all deserve this beautiful landscape in our lives. To ensure it's enjoyed by generations to come, we're finding new ways for the environment to prosper, protecting and preserving the wildlife and habitats they depend on. We work with partners and communities to ensure what we do now lays the groundwork to make sure our national park continues to be an important asset to the region, the nation and the world. Opening up opportunities for people of all backgrounds and abilities to connect with the environment. We visit, but many people live and work here. They keep it living and breathing, with fantastic colours, delicious tastes and inspiring places to rest our heads. They're the sustainable farms, the friendly smile, the pint poured and the connection to this wonderful land. The surface has only been scratched. Follow us here, for the true experience sits within the park's 400 square miles. Northumberland National Park, now and forever yours.
Hadrian might have been here 2,000 years ago, but we've got some really important history in this area from quite a bit longer ago than that. We've just come from Steel Rig Car Park and we've come up at the top of Peel Crags and we're looking down onto the Once Brood Visitor Centre. This landscape is a good place to look and think about how peat forms and what peat is. We can see this brown area. This is a peatland habitat, a mire or a bog. You have dips that hold water and wet-loving plants like that, and they start building up, and so you get layers and layers of partially decomposed plant material, and that's basically what peat is. We think that peat forms at about 1 metre every 1,000 years, so they can be round about 12 metres deep. It acts like a big sponge, and so they help to control how much water runs off and down into our rivers. What's really shaped this landscape is the action of ice or glaciers that we had over a period from about 2 million years ago to about 12,000 years ago. Glaciers scoured out some of the softer rock and in those hollows that's where we got the Roman wall lofts like Crag Loft behind me and Greenlee Loft and Broomley Loft forming.
We're only really near like Hadrian's Wall, but it's really quiet here, so it's quite surprising.
The photo's really good because it's like quite high above everything else. You can see quite far around you.
Instead of you walking on like the grass, you're walking on the like a proper path really.
And this is Cranberry, and it's related to the cranberries that you make the juice out of. But we've got some right here on our bogs in Northumberland.
What's that yellow thing?
That's marsh marigold.
What's that?
Hare's tail cotton grass, because it just has one flower head on the end of it and it looks like a hare's tail. This is sphagnum or bog moss. There's a variety of habitats here. We're back onto a sort of true peaty mire, but it does grade into reed bed and fen, a little mosaic of different peaty habitats next to the loft. They're also good for animals and birds as well, including otters that live in the loft.
Feel more involved, kind of. I thought it was surprising because I didn't think it would smell like this or be like this.
Belcrag Flow is one of the border mires which are found in and around the forest, and they've been designated as a special area of conservation. You know, it's really exciting that we've got these here on our doorstep. The peat holds lots of carbon in it, and if we look after the surface of the bogs, it means that it's not being released out into the atmosphere. So this mire's been affected and damaged because of peat extraction, and people still buy peat in this country to put on their gardens. One of the things that we've been doing in the National Park to try and keep bogs healthy is obviously blocking the drainage ditches to try and keep water on them, but also removing trees where they were planted on the margins of the bog. We've got a boardwalk here on Belcrag Flow, so you can get and look up at some of these plants really close to without getting your feet too wet. This is a sundew. They'll catch little midges and things like that, and then they'll digest them. Really pretty and delicate.
It was worth going out. Because we need to preserve these sort of things, and I mean, they're part of the past.
It's a real example of thinking globally about conservation but acting locally and looking after what's special in our area.
We're all seeing the devastating impact of climate change, and it's time we take action now. We are committed to decarbonising our business operations and the homes we provide in order that we can support the government's net zero targets. We're looking at how we can increase the energy efficiency of our homes, installing new renewable technologies, and understanding how we can move towards a net zero home of the future. Education and changing behaviours is vital to this, so we're working with our customers and colleagues. Our Take Control campaign is all about getting colleagues and customers on board and taking control of the negative impact we have on the environment. Collaborating and engaging with others across the region is vital to our success on this in order that we can learn from each other. There is a real skills challenge to hitting net zero. We're fortunate at 13 that we've come some way in addressing this, in building those skills and experience within the organisation. One thing we have done is the development of our environmental sustainability team, which is demonstrating our dedication to tackling our net zero challenge. We're getting everybody involved in the projects we're doing to reduce our environmental impacts. We're increasing biodiversity in the green areas that we manage, looking at how we can protect the birds, the bees, the plants and the insects. But there is more to do to deliver on our commitment to become England's greenest region.
Reducing our carbon footprint is everyone's responsibility, and there are many ways that we can all contribute. To make our organisation more environmentally conscious, we're all working together to help stamp out our direct carbon emissions, in turn reducing the climate change impact on our planet. The Take Control campaign will see 13 achieve its goals to becoming a much greener and cleaner organisation, in line with the government's target of 100% reduction in carbon emissions by 2050. With an important part to play in helping to achieve this target, 13 has set its ambition to reach net zero carbon by 2035 on its direct business emissions. We can all make better choices, such as reducing waste, being more energy efficient, and using more environmentally friendly ways to travel. We opened the first environmental centre in the region, and we aim to reduce waste to landfill by 95% by reducing, reusing, and recycling our waste. The upcycling department will see unused furniture refurbished to help the most vulnerable and those in need. Our ecology centre, with classrooms, beehives, bat boxes and trees, provides an opportunity for communities to learn about how we can all improve our environment and contribute towards cleaner, greener neighbourhoods. Our community projects will improve the environment for our customers. Trees are the most effective, natural way of helping to remove greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. We want to increase biodiversity in the green areas we manage to support and protect the natural habitats of birds, bees and insects. A new standard of aspirational homes will move the organisation towards its goal of being carbon neutral while lowering the cost for customers. Our customers are our priority, and what we're setting out to do will be beneficial for them so that we can continue to look after their health and well-being. The Take Control campaign is very much a team effort, with environmental champions and network of colleagues driving the campaign. We must all take action now to protect the environment for future generations.
Hi, I'm Ben.
And I'm Kirsty, and we're North Sea Rejects. We turn ghost fishing gear that we find during our beach cleanups
into bracelets. And when we sell these bracelets, we donate 75% of our proceeds to marine conservation projects worldwide.
So our idea for North Sea Rejects was born out of a passion for beach cleans and a desire to make a difference.
We regularly do beach cleans along our local coastline where we live. It's a real frustration of ours to find so much fishing gear amongst all the other pieces of litter that we find washed up. So we really wanted to do something a bit more meaningful with it, to try and prevent it basically all just going to the rubbish bin where it's basically sent to landfill.
And during the first COVID lockdown, we used our daily exercise to walk along our local beach, and we were beach cleaning every day. We were finding more and more of this ghost fishing gear, and we were trying to think of ways of repurposing and recycling, and that's where the idea of making and selling the bracelets came from.
One of the other things that really was impacted at the same time was our plans to go and volunteer for different projects around the world. We had a couple of trips which we use in our holidays to go and help with. So what we decided to try and do also with that was to try and generate some funds that we could then donate to these projects to help keep them going through what was a really difficult time.
We're lucky enough to live right by the coast, and that's a huge source of inspiration for us. We surf, we kayak, we swim, and we walk almost every day by the beach.
And the UK coastline is really diverse in terms of its marine wildlife, which also applies to the North Sea. We have regular sightings of bottlenose dolphin, porpoises, some white-beaked dolphins, as well as grey and common seals, which are seen fairly frequently, as well as some of the other species that we find like minke whale, humpback whale and even orca. So there is quite a really diverse range of wildlife that we find in the North Sea, and helping shift marine litter and ghost gear in particular really does help those animals.
Yeah, because spending so much time by the coast, we do also see the negatives, and that includes all the plastics washing up and the ghost fishing gear. And that's why we started to get more and more involved with beach cleans.
One of the things that we started to do as well was to use our holidays. We would start to go and support different conservation projects. In particular, we've done a lot around sea turtle conservation, which has been a really rewarding experience for the both of us, but it's something that we really wanted to then support while we were at home as well. So that was kind of the bits that came together for North Sea Rejects.
So the protection of the ocean really affects us all, because when you take a breath and then take another, that second breath is thanks to the ocean. It's estimated that between 50 to 80% of all oxygen we breathe comes from the ocean. So really it is a lifeline for us all.
And one of the really interesting things about the ocean when you talk about climate change is it plays a really significant part in how our global ecosystems work. It controls a lot of our weather and helps regulate our climate by essentially absorbing carbon from the atmosphere into the ocean. So at a time where COP26 is ongoing and people are talking about how we can address climate change, we can't leave the oceans out of that discussion. So whenever we're talking about climate and carbon, we need to be talking about the oceans as well. But as everybody's aware, there's a lot of challenges that the oceans are facing. Pretty much every one of them comes from humans in some way. One of the issues that's had a lot of media coverage is around plastic pollution, and the challenges that plastic, the 8 million plus tons a year that enters the ocean of plastic, and the impacts that has on everything that lives there. And when you talk about marine plastics, you have to also talk about fishing gear from industrial fishing.
Yeah, when you look at something like the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, 46% of that is fishing gear. So when we talk about marine plastics, it's so important to include fishing gear as part of that conversation. So ghost fishing gear is the term given to lost or discarded fishing gear, and that silently goes through the ocean, and it still does what it's designed to do, which is trap, kill or entangle marine life. So it's a huge problem, and it's threatening and killing marine life every year.
Yeah, and what we talk about with ghost fishing gear is industrial fishing gear, and it's estimated there's 640,000 tonnes of that enters the ocean every single year, either lost, discarded, or becomes entangled to the point where it can't be removed. There's also a statistic that over 100,000 marine animals every year lose their lives by becoming entangled or trapped in these ghost fishing nets, which are still floating in the ocean after the time where they've been discarded. So at a time where it's quite easy to become despondent and disheartened about climate issues and environmental issues, it's important to remember that there's a lot of people out there who do care. At the weekend, on Saturday the 6th, we saw over 100,000 people march through Glasgow to demand more action from our governments on climate change. So we take that away as being 100,000 individuals that came together to try and generate change. So there is a lot of power with individuals and in the actions of people, which repeated collectively do have a big impact.
We really believe in small actions making a big difference, and just some of the things that we do to try and minimise our impact is reducing single-use plastic use. We buy a lot of loose fruit and veg. You can also go to local refill stores, they're really great for reducing your plastic use. Taking reusables wherever you go.
We also switched to being vegan, so 100% plant-based, because of the environmental impacts that seafood and animal agriculture have on the planet and the environment. And obviously something that we do a lot of is beach cleaning. First of all, because we find the ghost fishing gear that we're making to our bracelets, but also because it takes no time to be able to take even just a handful of rubbish away from the beach. But our ethos is that because you went to the beach that day and you took away that rubbish, that's that rubbish less from entering the ocean. So it really can have an impact, no matter how small, but a positive impact is still a positive impact.
And ultimately we want to normalise taking care of the planet. If you see people picking up litter, when we see it, it really inspires us.
It's all about that ripple effect. One person sees something, it rubs off on them, so they then might do it, and little things can build up and generate momentum behind them. So depending on the fishing gear that we find on beach cleans, depends on what kind of bracelets that we make. We have a couple of different styles. So we have ones which we twist together and put charms on. So we've got a ghost charm, a starfish and a turtle, which is up here. And then we also have more paracord style bracelets as well, which we make. One of the really cool things about these is we can twist together different colours and different ropes to make really interesting kind of colour combinations, which look great, but also, crucially, gets rid of ghost gear from going to landfill, creates something out of waste, and we donate 75% of our proceeds to different projects around the world.
So we make a donation every 3 months to a conservation project of our choice, and so far we've donated to 2 turtle rescue projects in Nicaragua who are doing really important work for the nesting sea turtles there and protecting the eggs. And we've also donated to a sea turtle rescue project in Cape Verde, who again protect the nesting turtles but also protect the eggs and make sure that the baby sea turtles make their way back into the ocean.
All the projects that we've supported so far have all had really good roots in community, which is a really key part of making any conservation project work, is engaging local communities and getting their buy-in to what's going on. So the next donation will be for the period ending December, so we'll be making the donation in January.
And if you keep an eye on our social medias, you'll see exactly where that money will go. But thanks very much. Hopefully that's given you a little bit of an insight into why we started North Sea Rejects and what we're about. Ultimately, we just want to do our little bit to try and have a positive impact for conservation.
And if you're interested in finding out more, check out our website, northsearejects.co.uk, or us on Facebook and Instagram at North Sea Rejects.